At Thanksgiving dinner, her entire family was gathered in that overdecorated, overpriced mansion her father flaunted like a crown. Her mother, stiff, judgmental, and Botoxed into a constant grimace, sat at the head of the table. Her father, Ted, the patriarch, stood up with that smug grin and cleared his throat. Then it started. One by one, he handed out gifts. Not little trinkets, real stuff. A Rolex for her brother Jason. Keys to a new Jeep for her sister Natalie. An envelope stuffed with cash for her cousin Melissa. Even the nanny got a Cartier bracelet. The room buzzed with laughter, hugs, and forced gratitude. Then silence. Everyone turned to me. Nothing. I looked at Hannah, my wife, for a cue, a signal, maybe even an explanation. Instead, she smirked like she'd been waiting for this. Her sister giggled and said, "Oh, we forgot you." The table erupted in polite, poisonous laughter. I felt it then, that slow crawl of humiliation. But I didn't flinch. I didn't shout. I stood up, slid my hand into my inner jacket pocket, and pulled out a sleek black envelope. "I actually got myself something," I said, smiling wider than I had in weeks. The room fell dead silent. I slid the envelope across the table. Her father picked it up, eyebrows raised. He opened it. Inside? Proof of my acquisition of Trident Systems, the tech conglomerate he'd been trying to buy for years. The one that beat his bid by just enough to hurt. That was mine now. My voice cut through the stunned silence. Guess the joke's on someone else. They all stared at me like I had just detonated a bomb under their precious family tree. But that was just the beginning. See, that was the moment they all realized something had changed. And they had no idea what storm was really coming. Because the moment Hannah started sleeping with her yoga instructor, she thought she was playing me. She didn't know I'd been watching for months. She didn't know I already knew. And now? Now, I was ready to make every single one of them regret underestimating the man they refused to give a gift to. This wasn't just payback. This was the overture. The dinner wasn't the story. It was the opening scene. Her father's hand trembled slightly as he set the envelope down. His eyes flicked from the document to me, trying to mask the disbelief, but he couldn't. Not even close. Natalie, the one who'd laughed the loudest, sank back in her chair like gravity suddenly tripled. Hannah, though. Hannah didn't break. She just blinked slowly, as if she hadn't quite processed it, and then whispered, "What is this?" "You can read," I said, calm as a winter lake. "You tell me." She reached for the envelope, pulled out the papers, and skimmed. When she reached the bottom, her entire face changed. Her smirk shattered. Her jaw clenched so tight I thought she might break a tooth. This isn't possible. You don't have that kind of money." I leaned in just enough for her to feel the heat in my voice. "You have no idea what I have." And that was true. She never asked. Never cared to learn how many nights I stayed up planning, building, taking risks, bleeding for it all. She just liked the results. The houses. The first-class flights. The dinners. The glow of being a trophy wife to a man who never asked for anything but loyalty. And she couldn't even give me that. Weeks before that Thanksgiving ambush, I had already found the messages. I wasn't snooping. I wasn't even suspicious. She left her laptop open. I walked past. And then I saw the name. Zach. That name haunted me. Zach wasn't her friend. He wasn't our friend. He was a 27-year-old, tattooed grifter who taught Pilates and didn't own a car. I clicked. I scrolled. I read everything. Messages so detailed, so raw, they made my blood boil and my stomach turn inside out. They laughed about me, about my routines, my work, my predictability. She called me her backup plan, said I would never find out. She even joked that if I did, I'd probably thank her for the upgrade. I didn't confront her. Not then. I waited. I watched. I smiled like a man with no idea his home had already been burned to the ground. But I was building something else, quietly, carefully. I started pulling assets, talking to lawyers, restructuring companies, cutting deals behind closed doors. I wanted her to feel safe. I wanted her to feel clever. Because the higher she got, the harder she'd fall when I pulled the floor out. And Thanksgiving? That was the day I yanked the rug. After dinner, as everyone tiptoed around the sudden mood shift, I walked out onto the patio, lit a cigar, let the cold air sting my face. Hannah followed 10 minutes later. "You trying to humiliate me?" she hissed. "You think that was humiliation?" I turned, locking eyes with her. That was the appetizer. She glared at me. "Why now? Why not just leave like a normal man?" "Because I'm not a normal man, Hannah. I'm your husband." That hit her. Not in a romantic way, in the cold, cruel realization that she'd underestimated me one final time. "You're bluffing," she snapped. "You're still here. You haven't filed anything. You haven't done anything." "Yet," I cut in. Then I pulled my phone from my pocket and tapped the screen. She looked at it, and her face drained of all color. It was a photo, her and Zach, in our bed, taken 3 days ago. I had installed a new camera under the smoke detector. She never noticed. I didn't even need to say anything. She turned and walked back inside, but not before I said one last thing. "You were the biggest gift I never wanted." Her shoulders tensed. I didn't care. That dinner was the first shot, the declaration, and the war had only begun. The ride home was silent. She didn't say a word, didn't even look at me. She stared out the window like a spoiled child who didn't get her way. I could see the rage bubbling inside her, but there was nothing she could do. Not anymore. When we pulled into the driveway, she didn't wait for me. She stormed out of the car and slammed the doors so hard it rattled. I didn't rush. I took my time. I wasn't in a hurry to deal with her anymore. Inside, she was pacing the living room like a caged animal. "Is this why you've been so calm?" she finally spat. "You've been planning this behind my back?" I dropped the keys on the counter and looked at her. "No, you planned this. I just executed better." She scoffed. "Oh, please. You're not some genius. You're a bitter little man who's obsessed with control. And you're a cheater who thought she could ride 2 horses without getting thrown. How's that working out?" Her face twisted into something I'd never seen before, pure venom. "You were boring. Predictable. Always working. Always planning. You stopped paying attention. You became invisible." I nodded slowly. "And you became exactly what your mother raised. A reflection of her disappointment, just wearing better makeup." That hit. She flinched, but covered it with another wave of rage. "So what now? You gonna cry? Try to make me feel guilty?" "No. I'm going to dismantle you." She laughed, loud, shrill, desperate. "You're pathetic. Do you think anyone will believe you? Do you think anyone cares? I don't need them to believe me. I have proof. And I don't need them to care. Because the lawyers will." Her voice shook a little now. "You wouldn't dare." I stepped closer. "Already did." I walked past her, up the stairs, into the bedroom. I pulled out a small fireproof box from the closet and handed her a thick folder. She opened it. Bank records. Transfer receipts. The prenuptial agreement, highlighted, notarized, and enforceable. My lawyer's summary of her infidelity, dated and backed by evidence. A digital drive inside with full resolution photos and video. I watched her face collapse like a building under demolition. "I'm giving you a choice," I said. "Sign the divorce papers peacefully, take the settlement I'm offering, and leave with your dignity. Or, we go to court, and you walk out with nothing. Not the house. Not the car. Not even your name. Because I trademarked it last week." She dropped the folder. "You're bluffing again. Try me." For the first time, she looked scared. And that's when I realized something. She was never the strong one. She was never the dominant one. She only ever had power because I let her believe she did. The second I stopped playing her game, she was exposed, naked, desperate, fake. I left her standing there, trembling in her designer heels, surrounded by the ashes of her fantasy. Later that night, I slept in the guest room. I locked the door. Not because I was afraid, because I didn't want to hear her voice again. Not until the final nail was in. And as I lay there, staring at the ceiling, I felt nothing. Not pain. Not love. Just clarity. She was done. And I was just getting started. The next morning, I woke up before the sun. Quiet. Focused. I showered, shaved, and put on the same suit I wore the day I closed my first $1 million deal. Power had a look. And today, I wore it. I walked downstairs to find her already awake, sitting at the kitchen table in a silk robe like none of this had happened. She was sipping coffee, eyes red but chin still high, pretending she had some kind of leverage left. "You're dressed like you're going to war," she muttered. I didn't respond. Just placed a manila envelope in front of her and stood still while she opened it. Inside? A clean, final divorce agreement. No media circus. No bloodbath. She could keep her car, some jewelry, and a condo downtown I bought 2 years ago. On paper, it was still under my LLC, but I was offering it up. Generous, even after everything. But the rest? Frozen. Untouchable. She read the numbers. "I'm worth more than this," she said quietly. "You were," I replied, "before you sold yourself for yoga sessions and avocado toast." That stung. She looked away, blinking fast. "You can sign this," I continued, "and walk away with something. or you can drag it out and end up with whatever I decide you're worth after you're humiliated in court. Either way, we're done. Her voice cracked. So that's it. After everything, you're just cutting me off like I meant nothing? You did mean something, I said. But you buried that the second you let another man into our bed. She opened her mouth to argue, but I raised a hand. No more lies, Hannah. No more rewrites. I gave you loyalty. You gave me betrayal. End of story. For a moment, the room was still. Then she pushed back from the table and stood up, spine straight, trying to look unbothered. But her hands trembled. I want a lawyer, she said, trying to sound bold. You'll get one. I'll pay for the first hour. After that, you're on your own. I walked past her toward the front door. Oh, and Hannah? She turned slightly, still clinging to some delusion that she could turn this around. Don't ever confuse silence with weakness again. I left, got into the car, drove away from the house we once called a home, and didn't look back. I had meetings lined up, papers to file, assets to lock down, and a public statement to prepare, because once the dust settled, I wanted the world to know who she really was, in my own words. A few hours later, my lawyer called. She signed. It was over. Just like that. No tears from me. No begging. Only a strange calm. Like I'd walked through fire and stepped out clean on the other side. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I felt free. 2 days passed without a single word from her. The silence was sweeter than I expected. No yelling. No manipulations. No crocodile tears. She stayed locked in that house while I was already 3 steps ahead. I moved into a suite at the Langham downtown. High floor, skyline view, room service at my fingertips. Not because I needed luxury, but because I needed distance. That house had become a mausoleum for everything she killed between us. On the 3rd day, the text started. Hannah, we should talk. Ignored. Hannah, you're really going to end it like this? Read, not answered. Hannah, you don't even care? After all these years. She didn't get it. I did care. That's why it hurt. That's why it burned so deep I had to bury every trace of her just to keep breathing. But caring didn't mean forgiving. It didn't mean crawling back to a woman who treated me like an accessory to her lifestyle until something flashier came along. Later that evening, I got a message from Natalie, her sister. The same one who laughed at Thanksgiving. Natalie, she's not doing well. You should at least check in. I replied with one sentence. She didn't check in with me when she was with Zach. She left me on read. Good. The next morning, I stepped into my lawyer's office with fresh coffee and clearer purpose. We began finalizing asset transfers, property restructuring, trademark filings. Even adjusted the logo of one of my companies, a subtle move, but with a petty twist. The font now mimicked the signature Hannah had tattooed on her wrist when we were still playing pretend love. By noon, everything I wanted locked in was already in motion. By 3 p.m., I got a notification. Hannah had tried to log into one of my business accounts. Denied. At 5:07 p.m., she showed up at the Langham. Reception called. There's a woman here. Says she's your wife. She's mistaken, I replied. My wife doesn't exist anymore. I heard her raise her voice as security guided her out. She was still screaming something when the elevator doors closed behind me. That night, I sat on the balcony with a glass of bourbon, watching the lights flicker over the city. I thought about the man I used to be, the one who believed her lies, who stayed loyal when everything around him was already cracking. And I thought about the man I had become. Not bitter. Not broken. Rebuilt. Better. She didn't take my heart. She sharpened it. Now it was a weapon. A week later, she finally sent something that made me pause. Not a message. A letter. Handwritten. It arrived at the hotel front desk, sealed in a pale pink envelope with her perfume soaked into the paper like it could somehow hypnotize me through scent. I didn't open it right away. I let it sit on the glass table beside my bourbon for 2 full days. Let it stare at me while I closed deals, held video conferences, laughed with clients, and planned the next quarter of my life, a life she was no longer part of. On the 3rd night, curiosity won. The handwriting was still perfect, too perfect, like everything else she curated for the world to see. Inside, the letter was 5 pages of weaponized emotion. Not a real apology. No, just a calculated mix of self-pity and nostalgia. She wrote about our first date, how nervous she was, about our honeymoon in Santorini, how she cried on the flight home because it felt too perfect. Then she shifted. She talked about being unfulfilled, about how I was too focused on work, and how she felt lonely. She never once mentioned Zach's name. Not once. As if the betrayal wasn't the elephant in the room, it was the wallpaper. The final line? I miss the way you used to look at me, like I was the only one in the room. I just want one more chance to be that woman again. I folded the letter in half. Then I tore it into 4 clean pieces. I didn't even burn it. It didn't deserve the ceremony. The next day, her mother called. That part surprised me. Look, she said, with that tired, brittle tone rich women use when they pretend to care. Hannah's going through a lot. Maybe it's not too late to. I hung up. That night, a new number texted me a photo. Hannah again. She was crying. No makeup. Eyes swollen. Sitting on the edge of our old bed, my bed. The caption was just one word. Please. I blocked the number. This wasn't about pain anymore. This was about control. She thought if she acted broken enough, I'd come back to fix her. But she never realized I didn't marry her to fix her. I married her because I thought she was whole. No? She was just another lesson. That weekend, I flew to Chicago to meet with a private investor for a deal I've been chasing for 6 months. It closed in 3 hours. Over dinner, the investor, an older man named Carl, asked if I had family. Used to, I said. He nodded, raised a glass. Sometimes the best partners are the ones we walk away from. I toasted to that. Later that night, as I stood alone in my hotel room, staring at the city skyline, I felt the weight lift a little more. No more cameras. No more betrayal. No more games. Just me. In the empire I built. Alone, yes, but free. 2 weeks passed. The silence held. Then, one morning, as I was stepping into a boardroom in Manhattan for a quarterly strategy session, my assistant tapped my shoulder. Sir, I think you'll want to see this. She handed me a tablet. Front page of a gossip blog. CEO's scorned ex-wife seen partying with her alleged ex-lover again. There she was. Hannah. Short red dress. That same empty smile. And Zach, shirt half open, smug as ever, with his arm around her waist like he'd won some prize. Underneath, blurry photos of them outside a club at 2 a.m. Her holding a champagne bottle. Him lighting a cigarette while she laughed. She was showing off. Trying to wound me. Prove she didn't need me. The irony? She looked like someone who was already lost. I smiled. Because while she was parading her downfall, I had just closed the biggest private tech acquisition of the year. My name was in Forbes. Not as a side mention on the damn cover. After the meeting, I sent the article to my lawyer. Make sure this gets included in the final court documents. Let the judge see how she's spending her time. He replied instantly, already done. Back at the hotel, I ordered dinner. Sat by the window again. That skyline had become a sort of silent friend, unmoving, honest, real. Unlike her. At 11:42 p.m., she called. Blocked number. I let it ring. Then again. And again. I finally answered on the 4th. She was sobbing. Please. I messed up. Silence. I don't even know why I did it. I thought he loved me. I thought you didn't care anymore. I said nothing. Just let her speak. I feel like I've ruined everything. I wake up, and you're not there. I go to sleep, and all I see is your face. I exhale through my nose. Slowly. Hannah, I said, calm and sharp. You didn't ruin everything. You just revealed it. Her breath hitched. So that's it. After everything, you're just done. I was done the night you chose him. I just hadn't told you yet. She cried harder. Not the theatrical kind. The kind that comes when someone realizes their game is over and the prize is already gone. You don't understand, she said. I thought you were safe. And he was exciting. I was safe, I said. I was the man who would have burned the world down for you. And you gave me a match and walked away. She went quiet. I hope you find whatever it is you're still chasing, I added. But this was your finale. I hung up. Didn't block her this time. I wanted her to know the line was still open. Just no one on the other end anymore. 3 months later, the divorce was finalized. No courtroom drama. No public meltdowns. Just signatures, silence, and a whisper of everything that once was. She walked away with the condo, the car, and a severance check that looked generous, until you realized it was only a fraction of what she threw away. I kept everything else. Not just the assets. The calm. The dignity. The future. My team threw a quiet celebration that night. Nothing loud. Just a private dinner, some drinks, and a toast to new beginnings. One of the analysts leaned over and asked, was it hard? Letting her go? I didn't answer right away. Because the truth wasn't simple. It wasn't just about letting her go. It was about letting go of the version of me that tolerated her. The man who overlooked red flags because he believed in potential. Who thought love meant sacrificing your voice to keep the peace. That man was dead, and in his place was someone sharper, colder, stronger. I left the dinner early, stepped out onto the balcony alone, and called my mother. She was the only person I hadn't told everything to out of shame, maybe, or pride. But I owed her truth. She picked up on the second ring. Is it done? It's done, I said. She exhaled, like she'd been holding her breath for months. I'm proud of you. That was all I needed. I hung up, leaned against the railing, and looked out at the city lights. A million lives happening at once. A million stories, betrayals, victories. I didn't regret marrying Hannah. I regretted giving her the best parts of me before I knew she didn't deserve them. But now? Now I knew better. And I had a message for anyone standing where I once stood. If someone makes you feel small, forgettable, replaceable, walk away. And don't just walk, build. Build until the silence of your absence roars louder than their betrayal ever could. Because revenge isn't fire. It's becoming untouchable. And that's exactly who I am now.